In our top story at this hour, a Jet Airways aircraft operating from Mumbai to Jaipur was forced to return to the Mumbai airport as the crew of this aircraft forgot to select the bleed switch, due to which the cabin pressure could not be maintained. Out of the 166 people on board, around 30 people were left with bleeding noses and ears. The flight's cockpit crew has been taken off duties pending investigation. The airline is making alternative arrangements now for the guests on this flight. So my colleague Santhya Gora joining us live. Santhya, now this is a major, dereliction of duty on the part of the cabin crew of this particular flight. I believe Jet Airways has issued a statement. What does it say? Can you take us through exactly what happened?
See, at around 6:15 a.m. today, the flight which took off from Mumbai to Jaipur, the serious lapse was there in the flight because one of the cockpit crew, as per the preliminary information, forgot to switch on the bleed switch, which is responsible to maintain the pressure in the flight. Because of that, out of 166, 30 passengers complained of severe nose bleeding, ear bleeding and severe headache. As far as the situation of the passengers is concerned, out of those 30 passengers, 8 passengers are taken to Nanavati Hospital in Mumbai. And if we talk about Jet Airways has issued a statement and has said the crew is right now scheduled off duty, and until or unless the investigation, the inquiry in the matter will be over, they won't resume their duties. And recently, now also, Ministry of Civil Aviation has also taken a serious cognizance of the entire matter and has directed DGCA to look into it and file a report, to conduct an investigation and inquiry and file a report. As far as this incident is concerned, the flight was going from Mumbai to Jaipur. The incident took place at around 6:15 a.m. That's what the preliminary information says.
Right. Santhya, this is extremely serious also because the airline is, of course, trying to maintain that they have done everything possible to make sure that the passengers land safely. But the point is that 30 among the 166 passengers had to be hospitalized. Do we know about their condition?
See, as far as the passengers who are hospitalized are concerned, out of 30, those 30 passengers actually complained of severe nose bleeding, ear bleeding, and they were suffering from severe headache. But as far as hospitalization is concerned, 8 passengers are as of now admitted to the Nanavati Hospital and they are undergoing treatment. Their condition as of now, because they are under treatment, the treatment is going on, is said to be stable, but a close check is kept on them by the doctors of Nanavati Hospital. Jet Airways is also claiming that all the passengers are safe. Their condition is now improving also. Some of the passengers' condition is improving also. And Jet Airways has clearly said that they are going to conduct an investigation and inquiry, because as of now what we are hearing is that one of the crew member forgot to put that switch on, which means that it looks absolute negligence on the part of the crew. But that is that one thing which the final report, the final investigation or inquiry report will establish. As of now, the crew members who are part of the crew team
will be joining us in just a bit. But before that, let me remind our viewers, for those of you who have just joined us, let me just tell you what happened. This is a flight that took off from Mumbai to Jaipur. Now, while the flight was in progress, the passengers started complaining of nosebleed and ear bleeds, and it seems one of the crew members forgot to turn on the switch that is required to maintain cabin pressure. Mr. Kapil Kak, aviation expert, joining us here this morning. Good morning, Mr. Kak. Now, when something like this happens, obviously the airline should take responsibility. This is negligence on the part of the cabin crew of Jet Airways.
I'm sorry, firstly, it's not negligence on part of the cabin crew. No.
Okay.
It's a human error in the flight crew, people who are flying the aircraft. That's the first point I'd like to make. Secondly, Afrida, today's competitive civil aviation environment sort of compels airlines to put more passengers inside the aircraft and therefore give them a slight edge in margins, because the margins they're operating in terms of profit are very, very low. So there is the imperative to put more passengers in the aircraft. And when that happens, in the case of the Boeing 737, when the aircraft is heavily loaded, for the pilots to get a good climb segment, to be able to take off, have a good takeoff run and get a good climb segment, they switch off what is called the engine bleed. It's called a no engine bleed takeoff.
Okay. So do you think that in this particular scenario, that was necessary? It was a necessary evil, and perhaps we are not able to understand the entire technicalities of it. But are you in a way also saying that it could have been a decision taken by the pilot in this case?
No, it's not a code of wood. I'm explaining to the viewers in very simple language the technicalities involved. I started with saying when the aircraft is heavily loaded, and aircraft runway has limitations, or you want the aircraft to get safely airborne with that heavy load, the pilots, as per the manual, this is not something they are doing as a departure from the normal practice.
Absolutely.
As per the authorized flight manual for the Boeing 737, the pilots can do what's called a no engine bleed takeoff. Now, let me explain this very simply to the viewers.
Okay.
When this is done, the aircraft takes off safely, has a good climb segment after takeoff, and then climbs to the cruising altitude. When when one does this no engine bleed takeoff, it involves a certain procedure of a switch, which, as you said, is sort of put off. When this happens, the auxiliary power unit of the aircraft operates the pressurization. This is what you're talking about. There were nosebleeds and something. The auxiliary power unit of the aircraft operates this, but that auxiliary power unit cannot operate all the time. Therefore, let me explain it even more simply. At a certain stage of the climb, approximately 16 to 17,000, the pilots have to do what's called a supplementary procedure. It's not just switching off the switch-off switch, but it's also a supplementary procedure.
Right. We are just trying to understand if it's possible that there could have been a lapse, because, the flight had to return to Mumbai. If this was part of the procedure, the flight should have continued. Things should have resumed as per, like you said, the manual, the processes should have been followed, but the flight had to actually return to the destination. Some of the passengers had to be hospitalized. So clearly, we are looking at the issue with that kind of seriousness here. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Kak. Mr. Chandrasekhar Nene, another aviation expert, joining us. Mr. Nene, we spoke to Air Vice Chief Marshal Mr. Kapil Kak earlier, and he believes that certain processes are also necessitated during a flight, and it may happen that you have to bring in the oxygen mask. Do you think that this is a case of human error or negligence, or something that just could have happened during the process of takeoff?
On the face of it, it looks to be somebody forgot to do a procedural step in what is happening, and because it was not done, the pressure in the cabin increased, and the pressure increase actually caused discomfort to passengers. And the effect of such pressure increase actually gives different effects on different people depending on their own status of health. So obviously the 30 passengers who had got this problem definitely had a trouble that they perhaps were on the verge of not being very sensitive to pressure changes, and that's why it has happened with them. Now, it could be treated as a negligence on the part of the airline, but that will come out only when the...
Just interrupting you here, Mr. Chandrasekhar, because I have a passenger who was there in that flight. I'm not able to get his name right now. Go ahead, sir. Mr. Ghati, go ahead, sir. You were present in that flight. What happened? Share your experience with us.
Yeah, so we took off at 6 o'clock, and after that, the first thing was the air condition system pack off. And then the air pressure system pack off, and then all the oxygen mask came down. And then there was an announcement from the pilot that put it on your mouth and keep breathing. There was no other announcement. Then all the passengers were panicked. There was so much of pressure on the head, and they didn't know what is happening. But even in that situation, we remained in the air for half an hour. And when we landed, that time also there was no announcement. There was just a regret from the pilot. But then we came to know that some 8 of them of our co-passengers, they had a problem. Some of them had a bleeding from the ear and nose, and they are taken to the Nanavati hospital.
Right.
And after doing all this thing, now again we are boarded and we are about to leave. But those 8 people are not with us right now.
Right. So while this process was on, were you told exactly what is happening? Were you given enough assurance? Was there a situation of panic?
Nobody, even the air hostess had put them off. So even they were not able to come for the help. There was nobody.
So you were absolutely clueless what's going on. You didn't know how serious this is, and this is happening mid-air. Did this happen mid-air?
And the best, yes, in the mid-air. And the best part was many of them, they didn't know how to put their oxygen mask. So they were asking for the help, but there was nobody to help.
Okay. So that's the scary part. I mean, one can understand if it was a human error or technical snag, but then the cabin crew must, of course, come to the assistance of the passengers who are inconvenienced by this. So perhaps that lapse is quite evident here. Mr. Khati, also, if you can tell us, once this happened, the flight had to land back in Mumbai. After that, were you given enough assistance and guidance and information about when you will take off next?
Yeah, we've been told that we'll leave at 9:30, but now you can see it at 10:45. We are now on the tarmac.
Okay.
So, yeah, even at the ground, it was not very clear instruction, and exactly when people were asking what happened, so they had no satisfactory answer to it.
Right. Personally, did you feel any kind of inconvenience to yourself during the process?
I had pressure in my neck and my head, and there was a difficulty in breathing.
Right.
In fact, I've taken a video of some of my co-passengers, which I'm uploading.
Yes.
So this also you can show in the,
Right. We have a video playing on the screen right now where we can see the passengers using the oxygen mask. But like you said, even though this entire process is always explained to the passengers before takeoff, but one hardly ever expects something like this to happen in a domestic flight. Darsha Khati, many thanks for joining us. Mr. Chandrasekhar, if you're still with us, a quick word from you, in your assessment, how serious is this? Could this have been averted?
Actually, the seriousness is in a different direction. Whenever oxygen masks are deployed like this, they automatically get deployed because of the pressure change in the cabin. And in such a case, the instruction is to return to the nearest airport. Okay. So to your question, why it didn't continue on its flight, the nearest airport was Bombay, so it had to come back to Bombay. So that's for sure. Secondly, if there has to be a detailed inquiry both from the engineering side as well as from the human side. Was it a lack of training of the crew that this happened, or was it an engineering failure? In either case, this is the first time oxygen mask has been deployed in a large number of years in the Indian domestic airspace. So this is a very rare occasion. That is the only comforting fact. But we have to take cognizance of what exactly went wrong so that it's never repeated again. So that is my take on all this.
Right. Okay. Thanks so much for joining us.